In 3 hours, I modeled every single item in The Legend of Zelda. In honor of the new game being announced, I thought it would be fun to do a 3D modeling challenge, but with a Zelda twist to it. After doing some research, I realized there were like several hundred items in Breath of the Wild, so I decided I had to cheat, so I went back to the first game. Once I had all the images of these items downloaded from the Legend of Zelda wiki, I was ready to start modeling. To be honest, I planned for this video to be longer, but most of these were boring. This one, extrude a plane, merge the top vertices, inset the faces, pull mirror, done. This one is literally a triangle, like I can't help it. But there are a few we can look at. The line here is alright. I was going for something low poly to keep with the retro feel, as the game did come out in like, I don't know, 1900, but I think I did a good job, especially with what I had planned for the materials. The fairy is not a fairy. I do not care if this is how it looked on the NES, I like the orb fairy better than the fairy with, orbs. So I will make the fairy an orb. I'm also really proud of this bracelet. It's not anything more complicated than the rest of them, but I don't know, I just like how it turned out. For the rest of them, loop cut, extrude, scale, grab, rotate, bevel, you get the drill. Even better, I got to literally copy a bunch of them, so it turned out to be even less work than I originally intended. After I got on modeling with them, I was really happy with how they turned out. It took me less than 2 hours to make 37 assets that looked decent when untextured. I was really impressed with how far I was able to take it, considering how many of these are just very basic operations on primitive geometry. Look, this one is literally just a couple of cylinders. Alright, the fun part was, of course, texturing and shading. For this project, I decided to use cycles, which is a departure from my usual choice of Eevee, but it did make a few things like these transparent shaders and this emission shader easier to implement, so it was off to the races. Most of these are just a single node with maybe a noise texture on the roughness, so I sped through this pretty quickly. To be honest, I put more care into selecting which items had what material than I did with the actual materials. The bark one here is actually pretty cool though. I wanted wood and I wanted it to be a procedural material. Alright, let's slow down here. What is a procedural material? Well, a material is the thing that decides how light reacts to an object. For more details, watch this video. In a normal shader like a PBR shader from Polyhaven, you have a bunch of images that control the texture. But in a procedural shader, we use random numbers and we tame them using the power of math to create complicated materials. So for this basic wood shader, I built it up in a few layers. First, we have the little stripes from the grain of wood, which we'll make with a wave texture. We'll use this to make the color and the bumpiness. While we're at it, we'll multiply it with a noise texture to give it some roughness. The big question for this texture is, how do I add a knot for the wood? The wave texture has this vector input, which basically determines the direction the waves are going in, so if we add in a circular region using the sphere gradient node, it'll go in a little circle in this one specific spot. The final step is to just increase the distortion and give our grains that wavy look, and we're done. Of course, there is more we can add to this, but I was trying to do this quickly, so I called it good and moved on. With this complicated one out of the way, I made the rest of the shaders and my project was completed. These 37 items took me just 3 hours to make. Combined with the cartoony style of the models and the relative simplicity of the materials, I actually think these come together to form a pretty coherent toy aesthetic. If you're interested in more 3D modeling challenges, click this video here. But on your way out, make sure to subscribe and leave a comment if you have a challenge for me. Bye now.